So I am here to introduce our last presenter for the night, correct? Last?
Yes.
Barnaby Evans, who apparently created this thing called water fire. I don't know, it sounds kind of silly, it'll never catch on. But you may have seen those Most Interesting Man in the World commercials. What you may not know is Barnaby's the most interesting man in Providence. And to prove it, I'm going to read some random facts about him from his unauthorized autobiography that hits stores next week. Barnaby Evans still reads books printed on paper by candlelight. Barnaby Evans grew up in a 4-story treehouse with a circular stairway. Barnaby Evans spent many summers on the Paiute Indian Reservation in the high Nevada desert. Barnaby Evans was followed for months by a cloud of gypsy moths due to his research on moth pheromones. Barnaby Evans was a safe sex counselor at Burning Man. Not an easy job. Barnaby Evans spent a summer chest deep in a swamp being paid to film sex acts performed in the mud by dragonflies. And finally, Barnaby Evans once convinced a professor to accept his flying kite in place of completing a major research project. So without further ado, the most interesting man in Providence, Barnaby Evans.
Hey, John. Those are all true, by the way. Providence, there's so much great stuff that happens in Providence, and I want to talk about some fun connections we had with Providence and other cities. But at Waterfire, the thing we love about Providence is there's so much in the city. We've done projects with the Capoeira community, with the salsa community, with the Bolivian community. Here we have a Chinese dragon and some people from the Middle East coming to light Waterfire. But I want to talk about a situation we had where some friends from the Pakistani community called us up and said, "You're doing Waterfire on Pakistan Independence Day," and we rented Water Place Stage to do a Pakistani festival all day. 2 days later, our Indian friends said, "Hey, you're doing Waterfire on Indian Independence Day." We called the Parks Department and we rented Water Place Park Basin for an Indian festival all day. So I called the Parks Department and they said, "What, there's 2 different groups?" And I said, "Yeah, the Indians and Pakistanis are celebrating independence from each other." So we had a lot of negotiation, and believe it or not, for the first time in either communities in the history of the United States, we held a joint Indian and Pakistani cultural festival at Water Place Park in Providence, and it did it for 2 years. And every day we're wondering what's happening in Kashmir. So, to go a little further afield, though, we did have an opportunity to bring Waterfire to Singapore, which is the exact antipode to Providence. If we go right through Providence to the center of the earth, we come out in the South Antarctic Sea. Plenty of water, but we needed people. So we went due north to Singapore, which is right there. And it was a great adventure. Singapore is an amazing city, totally different from Providence, yet the same. And at Waterfire, we're sort of celebrating bringing 2 cultures together and things like this. Here's scenes of Singapore. So you've got colonial Singapore, modern Singapore, the famous Helix Bridge, which was featured, James, at your annual meeting. An amazing city. And it's a very bureaucratic city. So I would sit at these large meetings with many, many people, 65, 70 people in meetings. You know, here's one of them. Here's me trying to make a point. And we brought a dozen volunteers from Providence who had a great time working with their Singaporean counterparts and investigating food, and we'll talk about that. But it's one of these meetings where I'm sitting here, and the guy at the end of the table said, "You know, we need a little more information about something about Waterfire. We need to know more." See, this is our volunteers playing with their local people while I'm in the meeting. That's me over in the corner. They said, "We need a little more information about this night at Waterfire when so many people died." And I'm saying, "Well, nobody's ever died at Waterfire." And they said, no, we've got the newspaper articles. And I'm saying, "Well, no one's..." And we've got the newspaper. This is what my volunteers were enjoying while I'm in this meeting. And I'm saying, and I'm suddenly realizing in Singapore, it's not a free press. So if it's in the newspaper, it's true. And I'm saying, "Well, can I see the newspaper article?" And in front of all these people, this article gets brought down to me. And I'm imagining it's some total confusion. And I'm confronted with this. "Towering inferno. Explosion sent 2 gondolas miles into the Pawtucket." Notice 6.1 kilometer notation here. "Ensuing chaos. Hundreds fell to their deaths. Surpassed Chernobyl disaster site in Texas." Providence Place Mall. And I'm going, holy Jesus, what is this? It turns out these are all my volunteers working on the project. I'm wondering how we're going to do this. And I'm saying, turned out we never saw this. It was something called the Brown Noser. Thank you, Brown University. And I'm saying, well, this is a satire. It's a parody. And he said, but it's in the newspaper. And I'm saying, well, no, but it didn't happen. It's a joke. And all the way from across the room, he says, but it's not funny. We have a gulf here on free speech, parody, satire, black humor, and I didn't know what to say. And finally he said, just to be perfectly clear, no one's going to die at water fire in Singapore. And I said, we're on the same page, and we proceeded. And here's the water fire we did with the help of thousands and thousands of people. So it was really an amazing sense. But you really had a sense of what a different culture it was and what our sense of freedom allows us to do in Providence. And this was, here we put actually the audience out on the river and had the fires on both sides of them. But that night, we sent, from lighting in Providence, here we are on videotape, we sent a signal from Singapore back to Providence, and here are 3 Singaporean residents and Jim Bennett from the city of Providence who lit their torches electronically from our signal, and we lit water fire the same night because it's the antipode. So just as the sun's rising there in Singapore, we lit water fire here. But this is the city of Singapore, where you walk your birds. Here's everybody walking their birds out and putting them up in the park so that they can sing to each other all day. Totally different city. It's amazing just to sit here and listen to all the birds singing. So we went from Singapore and we were working here in Providence, and suddenly a website came up that listed great destinations after dark, and number 5 came up as Providence. And we thought, well, that's pretty cool. Go Providence, you know? So we started to wonder, well, who else is on this list of 10? And we were really intrigued to find that coming in at number 8 was, you know, that sort of podunk city over in France. Paris by nightfall came in at number 8. We said, well, Providence is doing pretty good here. So we had to figure out what was ahead of us or something. So we started to look at, you know, the ones ahead of us and realized that we're sort of in a different league. Because ahead of us was the Yosemite Valley scene in the flight of the full moon. We're thinking, wow, okay. They had a bigger budget than we did, for sure. And then we looked at what the other 2 were, which beat us out, which was the Aurora Borealis and the Milky Way seen from the top of Mauna Kea Observatory in the middle of the Pacific. And not only did they have a bigger budget, but, you know, the Parks Department, thank you, Tom Deller, with great cooperation with the city, we only get like 12 hours to set up water fire. They had 7 full days to make the Milky Way, the Aurora Borealis, and Yosemite. You know, it's just not fair. We just can't compare. But, you know, we just wanted to let everyone know that this is where Water Fire Providence is in the Milky Way. And just last week, the Hubble telescope found an all-water planet called JB 1614b. It's only 40 light years away, so that's our next site, to bring Providence to that planet. Thank you.
Thank you, Barnaby. Again, I say this often, but I am truly honored with the caliber of presenters this evening. Thank you, Libby, Thomas, Caroline, James, Bruce, Thomas, Jason, and Barnaby. All of you. Let's hear another round of applause for our presenters.